like we have a catch-up class next time, right? On Wednesday, in other words,
You can do it as a review.
well, we have legal liability to do. We're finishing ethics today, and we have legal liability to do.
Oh, yeah.
And there are 5 chapters for the first test, and it's a take-home that I'm giving you on Wednesday, right? And it's only going to take you an hour, hour and a half to do it, but it'll take you a lot of time to study for it. Hopefully you did a whole lot of that already, right? So I know some of you, a bunch of you are in the MBA, talking about it, but and I know you got MBA, and I apologize for having to test when you have MBA. You can thank the school guys for that, I guess. Anyway, so you got a couple days off, and you have to be punished for it. So that's good. Yeah, I was punished pretty good last week for having those snow days, and I knew it was going to be too. And my wife said, just relax, enjoy not having to do this stuff. Hard to do when you know you still have to do it. You have to do 2 weeks together. 3 weeks together. So anyway, okay. So we were here, were we?
No, 39.
Oh, I thought we were a little further along.
I deleted the learning objectives out, but
You didn't want to do those. Okay. Yeah, we did that. We did that. We did that. Okay. You know, students always ask, well, what do I need to know here? Oh, man, you guys, everything? Sorry. That's not what you can do. You have to know all of it. So, and the questions seem real nitpicky until you get so that you know everything. And they don't seem very nitpicky people. And I think it's just your knowledge base. So just pound on it. And it's a little strange for accounting majors to go back and do a class like this. It's like, you've done advanced business law, have you? Have anybody done that one yet? BA 403? It's the same thing, right? I mean, geez, it's just a whole bunch of theory and ideas and some numbers. So, yeah, this is the same type of animal, and there's nothing we can do about it. Just is. So, anyway, ownership interest. SEC rules on financial relationships take an engagement perspective. In other words, if you're working in engagement, you must be independent, huh? Okay, SEC rules prohibit ownership and audit clients by those persons who can influence the audit. And we were saying, of course, that typically what a CPA firm does is they'll just prohibit you from having investments in any of their clients, so they can assign you to that client. Otherwise, they can't. And it gets rid of any appearance that there might be a lack of independence. So, but the rule is just if you're working on engagement. Huh? So, all right. Other issues, shopping for accounting principles. We'll talk about a bit. With the deal with shopping for accounting principles is I've got one CPA who's doing my audit, and then I don't like what their interpretation of GAAP, so I go to another CPA firm to get an interpretation from them. So I have ammunition, right, to fight with the first one. Well, now if you are the CPA that they're coming to get help, you notify their current CPA who's doing the audit. The SEC will be notified about it. If there's a disagreement, you're in the mix now. Doesn't help them in the least to go to you anymore. Okay, so that's the idea. To get rid of shopping for accounting principles. There's nothing wrong with asking other people for their opinion. That's all right. That's cool. You can have your own opinion. Let's say you're working as an accountant internally in the company, right? And you're the financial vice president or something. You could have a different opinion than the auditor has, and you can fight over it, right? Ultimately, we either have to compromise, or you can fire the auditor, or but you're kind of in a box. You've got to work it out. So it ends up being a compromise, but I don't mean a compromise in terms of one person giving in or the other. I mean figuring out each other's position. A real compromise, not like our politicians do, right? Where one side gives in or the other. No, it's not that. You understand. Both sides understand what the viewpoint is and how it should work the best. And that's tough. It really is, because you don't want to compromise and violate GAAP, right? That's not okay. You don't want to compromise and have a scope limitation you don't disclose. That's not okay. So you're talking about whether things are material or not, different judgments. Yeah. What is GAAP? What isn't? Yeah.
So those always have to be like within the same CPA firm, or?
Oh no, they could go outside and shop with another CPA firm, no problem. It's okay, and bring that back to you. It's just that they have to give a report, right? Yeah. So everybody knows what the conversations were. Right. So they can't go give a different set of facts to the other CPA firm and get them to agree. Oh no, that's no problem. No. You have to give them the same information. You're involved in the conversation. Okay, engagement and payment of audit fees by management. Are we independent? If they're paying our fees, we say yes. so you think we're independent? Yeah, so it's the general public, the investing public. Can the auditor be truly independent? It depends, like their payment depends on company management. So who should really hire you? Who's supposed to be hiring you? Management or the audit committee? Audit committee. Who's compensating you? The audit committee. The audit committee. The board of directors, the audit committee. Management's writing the check though and signing it, right? Their people are writing the check. They don't write the check personally, but their people are writing the check and they're signing it. So we know where the money's coming from. But it's better having the audit committee, right? Because what if part of your job is to report on the performance of management. It is. So management doesn't want you to disclose something a particular way. You think the audit committee might be on your side on the issue? Yeah, it's information they really want. They should have. Management doesn't want them to have it. You get the picture on this thing? Used to be we just deal straight with management. There was no audit committee years and years ago. So you can see there's a lot more leverage on it. Now with the audit committee, well, the audit committee can say, yeah, it's just fine. That's why we hired them. Right? They can tell us what's really going on. So anyway, you can get in tough situations. All right, so here we go. Do you need to memorize rule numbers? Not particularly. What they'll do is they'll say, Rule 101 discusses, and then they'll let you know that Rule 101 is all about independence. Okay? In the questions, you look at these questions, the multiple choice questions and the essay questions, they'll pretty much tell you what, they might mention Rule 101, but they tell you what it's about. Okay? So it's not going to be like, Rule 101 is, then you need to write it all out. It's not going to be that sort of thing. Okay? So you can, let's put it this way, you can use associative memory instead of recall on these things, almost always. Okay? But you ought to know Rule 101 is about independence. A member in public practice shall be independent of the performance of professionals in the performance of professional services as required by the standards promulgated by the bodies designated by the council. Okay, so we have to be independent in fact, but we also should be independent in appearance, right? So then there's some interpretations of Rule 101. Okay, they prohibit covered members from owning any direct investments in audit clients. So we need to know what a covered member is. They can have no direct investment. And when we say direct investment, how many shares of stock would we need? What? Are you in fact not independent if you own one share out of 1 million shares in a company? I don't think it has any impact on your independence whatsoever. It's not material to your wealth. It's not material to the financial position of the company, right? To their total equity. You aren't important to them. They're not important to you, right? In terms of that ownership. But what would be screwed up? The appearance, okay? So any stock at all. Direct versus indirect, we'll talk about what would indirect be. I have investments in a whole bunch of companies. I do not know what they are. What did I just describe? Mutual fund, yeah. I own hundreds of different companies. Little tiny piece of it. They don't know who I am. I don't even know who they are. I mean, I can go look it up if I want, but it's moving, right? They're changing, okay? Mutual fund managers are buying and selling and buying and selling and buying and selling, right? So that's a moving target, okay? So I know the types of things they invest in. I know the approximate risk level that I'm investing in, right? Okay? And they're managing the money. So that would be considered a what? Indirect financial interest, okay? The way you guys are going to probably invest is correctly into stocks, right? Because if you're invested in a stock, what happens? You by definition are not independent of that company. They cannot be your client. This is one of the worst things about being a CPA. When people start a new business and it looks like a really cool idea, you can help them organize the business, but they cannot pay you in stock. The attorney who helps them organize the business, they can give shares of stock. Would they like to give you shares of stock instead of giving you cash, seeing as they have absolutely no cash when they're starting the business? Yeah, they'd prefer that. And it might be really, really good for you, too. You can't do it. Why not? You can't be their CPA anymore because you're not independent. Which means what, by the way? You can't do services where you have to be independent, which would include what? Audit, a review, compilation. Pretty much anything you're going to do other than what? Tax practice and consulting. You can do consulting for them and not be independent, right? In fact, you're an advocate when you're doing consulting. You're trying to help them be more profitable, right? When you're doing tax service, you're an advocate. Within the law, you're trying to have them pay the lowest tax bill possible. It's got the distinction on this, right? As an auditor, are you on their side? No. Are you against them? No. You're independent. All you want to do is tell the truth and help them tell the truth. And that's hard to get people to understand that relationship, too. Well, wait a minute, I'm paying you a whole bunch of money. Aren't you on our side? And my answer is, of course I'm on your side. I'm going to help you tell the truth. That's on your side. Because long term, you're better off if you tell the truth, obviously, than if you falsify your financial statements. Okay? I'm going to help you not make mistakes. Right? I'm going to help you have good internal control. That's going to make you more profitable too. I'm definitely on your side. But I'm not against your shareholders. I'm not against the government. I'm not against anybody. I'm independent, right? It's really strange. It's a strange world to live in.
Would you say it's important to know like 6 types of cover numbers or just practice?
Yeah, it's good to know them. I don't know if you list them, but if you know them, then you know which ones would be and which ones wouldn't be. But I'd still make the judgment and help you remember which ones they are. Could you have an influence or not? The basic idea is, could you influence a decision, right, relating to the audit? Then you're not independent. If you couldn't, then you are independent, basically. But you got to go for appearance too, right? And then material or immaterial interests, right? So we'll talk about that. Okay. So what's the deal? Oh, former practitioners. What would you say on that? What are they talking about? They throw it out. Former practitioners. A retired partner, perhaps. So if a retired partner has a big interest in a client, does that affect your independence? You know that? Yes, no?
No.
You have to stay independent after you no longer work for the CPA firm?
No.
Not working on the engagement, you're not affiliated with the firm. Uh-oh. What if the firm's still paying you out? Buying you out? Yeah. You have a financial interest in the firm. You now have a financial interest in this client. You've just wiped out the firm's independence. So what will you have with retiring partners? An agreement that they will not invest until you finish buying them out. So you're still restricted. Okay? Makes sense? Okay, so yeah. So former practitioners might, right, have an impact if you're buying them out. If they're just retired, they're going. What if they leave the firm? You have no affiliation anymore. Now, you have no economic relationship with them. Can they go ahead and invest in former clients? Yeah. How about going to work for? We talked about that one before, right? How about going to work for? Can you go to work for one of your clients when you leave? There has to be a cooling off period, right? How long? Yeah, and those are SEC rules, right? What about if it's a CPA firm that has private companies as clients? Could you go to work for them? Yes. Okay. There was no prohibition before. Okay, sorry, classic. What's normal lending procedures talking about? Normal. Normal and abnormal. Not normal and unusual, I guess. Normal and special deals. Insider. Yeah, that's that. But what do you think this is? What would be an example of a normal?
Like hardware. The company pays audit fees 1 year.
Oh, well, that's one, yeah. What if there's some sort of a relationship like that? They haven't paid you your audit fees, and now they want you to do the audit for next year. Are you independent? By definition, no. By the way, might it really affect your independence? Probably not. But it's a nice thing for bill collecting, right? I'm not independent. You have to pay me last year's audit, or I can't do this year's audit. You have to pay me the fee. But might it impact if I'm fighting with them over them paying me the bill? I'm now a bill collector trying to collect. And now I'm supposed to be independent. What do you think? Might you be getting angry about it? Might they be dragging their feet to pay you? All those sorts of things. Might you have a vested interest in them not going broke before they actually pay you? Do you have a going concern issue? Yeah. So you can see why that would be a difficulty. That's one of them. But what's lending procedures? Normal lending procedures.
Making loans to them.
You make loans to them or they make loans to you. How about if they're a bank? And they have all kinds of car loans. They're a bank. And they all have all kinds of mortgages. Can you have your mortgage with them, your car loan with them? Sure, as long as what? You do not get a preferential interest rate. You don't get a loan you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. You are not treated any different than anybody else. I mentioned to you guys that we had a client that made really fine furniture, and they told us they'd sell it to us for cost, which is about 1/4 of what they sell it for, right? Margins on really nice furniture are really high because their volume is really low, right? So we couldn't buy the furniture. Why not? Arm's length. Could we go to their store and buy it when it was on sale? They didn't have stores. But, you know, could we buy their furniture when it's on sale someplace? Absolutely, no problem with that. Same price they give somebody else. Could we buy it at wholesale prices? No, we weren't wholesalers. Couldn't do that. Got the idea? You can't take any special privileges, that's all. So, you know, you can do business. In fact, would you want to do business with people? You know what? When you guys, when Strothman brings in lunch, they bring it from, they're really good sandwiches from a deli here in town. I wouldn't even be familiar with if it wasn't them. You guys, have you gotten those lately? No? Strothman hasn't been here for a while. Anyway, it's a small deli here in town who happens to be one of their clients. Is that a problem? No. They're going to pay the regular price for the sandwiches that anybody else would. They buy the sandwiches from them. Of course you do business with your clients. Right? Is there anything wrong with having your offices in a building? When I was at Arthur Anderson, we were in a building in downtown Seattle that was owned by one of our clients. Any problem with that? Of course not. Why would there be a problem with that? As long as what? No preferential rent. Okay? Some people say that Pricewaterhouse shouldn't be in the Humana building. That's not really about the rent they pay. I don't know if Humana owns the building or not. They probably do, right? But it doesn't matter if they do or not, right? There's a lot of other people in that building. They rent it out. What the real issue is they see them all the time. They're not only working in the audit, they're with them all the time on the audit, but you can't get in the elevator without running into Humana people, right? So some people would say, wow, you know, this is not a good situation. I know, that's such a big deal. What you have to do, though, is think about yourself. Am I independent? Am I really independent of it? Can you go golfing with your client? Of course you can. People do all the time. Can you go golfing 3 times a week with your client? Year-round? No. You're not independent anymore. You're good friends. Right? Can you be friends with your client? Let's hope you're friends with your client. Professional friends. Okay? Can you date your clients? No. I have a high school friend that he got the financial vice president of one of his clients pregnant. He's working for a big 8 in those days, big 4. Guess what happened to both of them? They now are pregnant, the 2 of them together, and they are both unemployed. No kidding. CPAs violated their integrity. So, watch it. Right? Be careful. Yeah. I used to always tell students, don't date anybody you work with within the firm, or anybody that's a client, or anybody in the business community you happen to know. You'll be safe now. Which means don't date anybody, right? So, you know, what do you do? By the way, do people working for the same firm marry each other? Yes. You know what my advice is for that? Why don't you switch firms? What do they do now? One's in tax, one's in audit. They don't have both at the same moment. Because they don't want to ever have one work for the other. It's a mess, right? So what if you're both at the same level and one gets promoted? Now you're working for them, maybe. Engagements. So you can do what you want with that. I mean, it's not prohibited. It never was really prohibited. They just strongly discouraged it. They'd get rid of you if you got married. And that's which one you're leaving. They don't do that anymore. It's a violation of your rights. But you can see they have a lot of difficulties. Does that affect your independence, by the way? Of course not. Right? It's not with the client. You still can't marry your clients, guys. Well, unless you get rid of them as a client or you quit your job, then you can, I guess. So don't date either of your clients. What a mess. So I think things are pretty obvious. Okay, financial interest in employment of immediate and close family members. So there's rules for that, huh? Right? And what did you say? Does a person have the potential for impacting your decision? So how about investments of your children? If you're directing those investments, of course. How about investments of your parents? Yes, if you are aware of them. This is tough, huh? Right? Certainly if you are controlling your parents' investments, so don't go there. How about your uncle's investments? If they're extremely material and you're aware of them, yes, that can cause you a real problem. Okay, what if you're not aware of them? No problem. Okay? So what you should do if you have wealthy uncles is tell them, please don't tell me what you own. Don't put it in the newspaper. Because then I'll know. I want to know. I'm not kidding. It's kind of like that. Okay? So you got to be careful with this stuff. What do we mean by a close family member? Your children, your parents. What about stepchildren?
They're dependent on you.
If they're dependent on you, if they live with you. What about your grown children? If you control those investments or you are aware of them, right? Okay, you're not independent of your children. You couldn't audit your children as adult children. You couldn't audit their financial statements, right? That makes sense. Okay, so you use your head on this, but also there are specific rules. Joint closely held investments with a client. Can you be invested with a client in some entity in a joint venture? So no, of course not. Okay. Can you be any sort of a decision maker, director, officer, management, or employee of a company or of an organization in general? Can you be making decisions and then audit those decisions? The answer is no. Okay? So you have to keep things separate. That's just not a big deal. Now, this is the idea of unpaid fees, that if it goes to the point of litigation, particularly, what would we say? You know, you're suing each other? Come on, right? So, you know, a lawsuit or intent to start a lawsuit between a CPA firm and its client. The ability of the CPA firm and client to remain objective is questionable. Violation of 101, right? So, all right. So, now this is interesting. What about SEC? Can you do bookkeeping and auditing for a company if you're an SEC doing public company? No. Right? It's one of the prohibited areas. Can you do it if you're doing a private company? The answer is yes. Would you? No. It permits it, but we wouldn't ordinarily do it. Why not? I'm auditing my own work. You're doing the bookkeeping. I would never do it. Nothing done. Okay, and most firms would not. What do you do instead? If you want to do the bookkeeping, do a compilation and state that you are not independent. Okay? Can a publicly held company have a compilation? No. Can a publicly held company even have a review? No. They have to have an audit. Can it be an audit where you are not independent? No. They have to have auditors who are independent. So, yeah, no big deal. All right. Bookkeeping and other services, the client must accept full responsibility for the statements. Now, this is true. When you're working in a smaller firm, the client will constantly ask you for your advice. You'll give them all sorts of information. You'll give them ideas about how they should record things. Just be careful of what. I wouldn't do their bookkeeping. I'd actually doing it, because then they clearly don't know what's going on. But what about if they have a bookkeeper who isn't real knowledgeable necessarily, right? Lower salary, right? They're getting a lower salary out of it, and they hire you to help them. Anytime there's a question, they call you up, and they pay you for it, right? And then you also are doing a review compilation where you say you're independent, right? Director compilation. Or maybe you're even doing an audit, right? Although usually if you're doing an audit, you have conflict of personality. They don't want to get it on their own code to do an audit. But let's say you had that scenario, though, you're doing a review. Can you answer their questions and then have them book journal entries? And you know pretty much that they're going to book the journal entry you recommended. Can you do that? Yes, but you need to make sure of what? The client knows they're taking full responsibility for that entry. So is it important for your client to understand their own financial statements and how they got the numbers in the financial statement? Yeah. So that's the critical thing if you're working on private companies. On public companies, it's not really an issue because they have people who are CPAs working for them. You're not going to be explaining what GAAP is to them. You might be arguing with them about what GAAP is, but you're not going to be explaining it before they book journal entries, right? They know how to make a journal entry. It's a whole different world. Okay? So this is okay. The CPA must not assume the role of employee or management. I mentioned to you that if you are involved in deciding who they should fire and who they should hire, should you audit them? No. You're auditing your own work. You made the decision to hire somebody. Wouldn't you naturally think they might do a good job with somebody you hired? I see this kind of thing all the time. So no, you can't assume a role of employer management. And then of course you have to report to auditing standards. Okay. The SEC and AICPA rules do not follow audit firms, do not allow audit firms to provide bookkeeping services to public company audit clients. So if it's public company under either one, AICPA is just the auditing standards, right? SAS is, SEC is peekaboo, public company financial oversight board standards. Consulting and other non-audit services, how about that one? Can you do consulting and other non-audit services? It depends on what the service is. Can you do a tax return for your client and do their audit? Yes. They're making the decisions. You are preparing the return, right? That's fine. decisions about how to do their tax planning to try to avoid paying taxes legally. Can you do that and do the audit? No. It's fairly close, isn't it? Why can't you do the tax consulting? Because now you're acting as management. Okay? Then you'd be auditing your own decisions. And unpaid fees, right? If they haven't paid you the prior year, you cannot start the new year. Now, I've done this a lot with small clients. If they're broke, they pay you, dragging you out. So, well, and they say, well, when you get to start, the financial statements on our audit. Can't start. Can't bill. What? Can't start. We do it for reviews and compilations, too. You have to be independent, right? Can't start a compilation. So in other words, you can't have your financial statements if you don't know how to prepare them. I'm doing it for you. But you can't have me prepare them unless you pay me a fee. So I'm independent. Okay? So want to be independent. All right. So the rules of conduct, 102 is integrity and objectivity, 201 is general standards, compliance with the standard is 202, 203 accounting principles, 301 confidential client information. All of these are really general until you get down to 301. Okay? 302 contingent fees, 501 acts discreditable. Is falling down in the gutter an act discreditable? No, not really. Right? So you can have absolutely horrible behavior. I was pretty good at horrible behavior when I was a farmer. Drank a lot. Yeah. Anyway, acts discreditable means what? Discreditable is profession. Okay. Advertising and other forms of solicitation. These rules have kind of changed. Commissions and referral fees. What's the difference between a contingent fee and a commission? What's the difference between a contingent fee and a commission? Those are easy to mix up. But they both start with C's and they're long words, I guess. People seem to mix them up. Contingent fee and commission. What do you think? What's a contingent fee? Yeah, or the outcome in general. Right? You could have contingent fees on all kinds of things. But yeah, it might be, if I give you an unqualified opinion, you pay me a lot more money than if I give you a qualified. Might I have motivation to make sure it's an unqualified opinion done, right? So you can't have the fee contingent on some outcome. Now, can you have a fee contingent on an outcome if it's consulting work? Yeah. You're helping them make decisions, and you get paid more or less based on the outcome of the decisions that they made with your advice. That'd be all right. Okay, so how about a tax return? Contingent fee based upon how big their tax refund is. No. Can't do that. Okay, so anyway, what's a commission and a referral fee based on the same thing? I used to consult with clients on what computer systems, believe it or not, they should be buying, right? So, boy, could I not do that anymore. Okay, but anyway, so I was pretty familiar with all the systems that were out at the time, and what they do, and what they cost, what the financing looked like, what the service looked like, and all that stuff. And so I'm doing a whole bunch of consulting with my clients. And you wouldn't believe how many of the computer outfits, manufacture software and hardware both, would want me to have an arrangement with them where I got a commission for getting the sale. Is that okay? Actually, it is. If what? You disclose. So here's what we're supposed to do. Now, not related to the audit, right? But just in general, can you? As a CPA. And the contingent fees, of course, the client would know about because it's contingent upon something that happens. So it'd be the area you're working. But on the commissions, what do you think? You're going to tell the client, okay, I'm going to advise you on which of these 5 computers that we're looking at you should buy. Software programs. But oh, by the way, I get a 10% commission on this one, a 2% commission on this one, a 3% commission on this one. That's all okay with you, right? What's your client going to say? Give me a break. Of course you want the one where you get the big fat commission, don't you? So we always refuse commissions. No. We don't do that. We bill people for our time, right? For the work we do. So no commission. So I tell them, well, if there's a commission arrangement, then you should reduce your price by that amount because you have more chance to get a bid. Your price is low. Commission's kind of a bribe to the consultant, isn't it? Right? I'll give you a cut if you sell that. kickback almost. So be careful with commissions. Form of organization and name is really interesting. It used to be that you couldn't have names for CPA firms who were not human beings who were currently alive. Or in the case of Parker's, you realize that Ernst and Young are both dead, right? They were people, real people. Yeah, they're both long dead. And Arthur Anderson, when I worked there, it was Arthur Anderson was the person, right? Long dead. You can keep a former partner's name. That's okay, right? After they're deceased, but you can't have a fake name, right? You could not have a fake name. Now you can. Now you can be X, Y, Z CPAs if you feel like it. Very few people do that, but you can. Okay, so, and that was restraint trade. That's what that was about. We were supposedly restraining trade by not letting people have particular names. Same with advertising. It used to be that you couldn't advertise. When I first went into the profession, you had to be really careful about giving people your business card, the setting that you were in, because you couldn't be pushing your business, right, relative to somebody else. The big billboards you see, particularly attorneys use them, all these guys, like the ambulance chasers, you know, the guy with the sledgehammer. Did anybody really hire him? But anyway, yeah, lots of people hire him. Right? The advertising works. Can CPAs do that? The answer is yes, but can it be misleading? Because there's clearly it might be. Right? Can it be misleading? No. So do you see CPAs doing ads like that? When Crow put their name up on their building, right, they didn't ask me. They should put that big name, which is advertising. It also identifies where they're at, but you were supposed to have a sign on your door, not, you know, great big flashing, they don't flash, big lights on the side of the big building. But at Chilton and Medley, before they merged with, Chilton and Medley, they were talking about putting a sign up on the side of their building, and they actually asked me what I thought about it. Before, anybody care who you are anyway? But it's just your egos, you know. A lot of people having trouble finding you. It will help to have it way up there on top of the building, you know. No. Just Pro did it, so we thought maybe we should too. Most firms don't, right? By the way, is anything wrong with Pro doing it? No, of course not. It's fine, and it's reasonably stated. Does it say Pro? You'll get bigger tax refunds if you come here? Does it say Crow, we do audits cheaper? No, none of that. Okay, so we have this stuff too. So advertising is quite all right now. Hand out your business cards if you want it. Okay, and we'll come back to this stuff. Okay. AICPA Professional Ethics Division, Peekaboo Enforcement Division, State Boards of Accountancy. It's really interesting to read. By the way, is there any teeth in this? Do you think there's much done in the way of enforcement if you violate the code of ethics? What do you think, guys? What can the AICPA Professional Ethics Division do? Take away your membership in the AICPA. You can't. Is that a big deal? Well, fairly. Your reputation, right, could be damaged. State Board of Accountancy, they can take action against you. Again, reputation damage. Can they really stop you from practicing? Well, the state board theoretically can take your license away. They can suspend your license. They have more power than the AICPA does in this area. So individual state boards, if they do it, if they were to suspend your license, can prevent you from working. What about the Public Company Accounting Oversight? And they don't do it very often, by the way. What about the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board? Oh yeah, they can prohibit you from working on SEC fines. Right? Huge deal. Huge deal. So theoretically, okay? So people are pretty careful. So there is enforcement. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back in the chapter a little bit. We talked about the ethical principles on page 85, right? I would know what's in that green box in the middle of page 85. I'd have that wired, and just wired, okay? They'll expect you to know responsibilities, the public interest, okay? So, you know, you're going to do what? Exercise should exercise simply professional and moral judgments in all their activities, right? Public interest, what's one of the biggest things that makes us a profession? We serve the public. We don't serve our client. We serve the public interest, okay? We are the only profession that does it. I think to some extent engineers do, right? Yeah, they want to serve their clients that are building buildings, but they also don't want the building to fall down on people. So there's a little bit of both. And you could say the same for architects. And you could say the same thing in some sense for attorneys, I guess, but not to the extent of us, right? And doctors, not to the extent of us. The public interest is what we care about. Everybody's our client is the way to look at this. Okay? No kidding. Integrity in everything, well, I would hope other professions would have that. Objectivity and independence, again, tell me what the difference is between objectivity and independence. Who's independent? Who can be independent? What's the difference? Are independent people objective? Yes. Are objective people necessarily independent? No. That might help. Might guess. What do you think? Objectivity, independence. What's the difference? Independent, you work for the public, right? You don't work for your client. You are independent of your client. You don't even think you work for your CPA firm. You're independent of that too. And when you do something unethical, you go somewhere else. Get out from under it. You won't do it. Really independent. Who has to be objective? Well, are independent people objective? Of course they are. They're unbiased. They're objective. Okay? They don't have any vested interest in any particular outcome, right? That's the way you have to be. By the way, might it affect your wealth if you're truly independent? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. They can fire you for being independent. What about objective? You can get fired for being objective too. But who would be objective but not independent? Independent auditors are still objective. Who would be objective, you guys? What's the big difference? Objective are people who are employed by the organization. What if you're the financial vice president or you're the controller? Manager of any kind within the company, and you're a CPA. You're still objective, but you are not independent by definition. You work for them. You're one of them. Might you have a bias without even knowing it? Yeah, you need to be real careful about that, and that's what objectivity is, okay? So you maintain your objectivity no matter what. You need to develop this mindset right away, okay? It really bothers me when CPA firms call themselves businesses. It's okay. I mean, they're doing business and everything, but I think they're CPA firms. It's independence is the issue. A business, you're all about making money, right? A CPA firm should be about delivering good services. And oh, by the way, they pay us. A whole different mindset versus let's make as much money as we possibly can. And when you see CPA firms get themselves in trouble, Arthur Anderson, the other ones too, we're all doing the same thing, right? Start to compromise your integrity pretty easily. Some of the audits that Arthur Anderson did before they got rid of Arthur Anderson were unbelievable. Unbelievable what they decided was not material. 25% of your net income is not material, right? Companies making billions. Or they're making a tiny amount relative to their sales, and really they're losing a fortune. But that wasn't material. Really ridiculous. Okay? Scope limitations, it was just over the edge. Gap violations, just over the edge. Okay? So maintaining your independence and your integrity is everything. That's not even maintaining your integrity. Due care, what's that? Try hard, right? A member should observe the professional, technical, and ethical standards. Strive continually to improve competence and quality of services and discharge professional responsibility to the best of the member's ability. Do the best you possibly can. And then scope of nature of services, we won't do anything where we have a conflict of interest, right? We won't do anything where we're not independent if we have to be independent in that particular service. So, yeah, sure. Okay, so if you leave employment, right, with a CPA firm and you want to go to work for the client, how long do you have to wait? You can go to work for them, but in a non-accounting role, right? You have nothing to do with accounting at all, not just the audit, accounting at all. That's the rule. they're not going to hire you for the CPA firm and put you in an accounting department and have you enter data, right? And you're not going to be a clerk. And even if you are a clerk, you might make some decisions, you might make some journal entries.
We just hired an auditor for KPMG. She was a senior.
What do you have her do?
She's in external reporting. You just can't post journal entries.
That's awful. That's awful. I think they're a violation. Maybe technically not, but wow. You know what they usually do? They have one in the marketing department
Yeah.
for a year. And maybe nothing for the year, because they really want them bad, so they don't have any real value, right? But they put them over there for a year. I think that's bogus too, personally. I'd like to break in service, but a year's not nearly long enough, probably. Should go to work for somebody else. Right? Ideally, that was the original intent. That's really scary. That's really scary. I mean, you know, they don't have anything to do with preparing the statements. They just analyze. Well, if they're only analyzing them after the fact, I suppose. But you know what? If they're doing investment decisions of some kind, or they're trying to attract shareholders, or they're negotiating debt, oh man, what do they do? What can you do that doesn't end up in the financial statements in an organization? What decisions can you make that do not end up being reflected in the financial statements? Wow, tough, isn't it? So the idea is you're not supposed to be making any. It has nothing to do with it. I would even argue that being in the marketing department and being responsible for marketing plans, it's kind of tough. Also, you probably don't have the expertise to do it anyway, right? So, you know, yeah, I think it was kind of a joke when they started doing this. When we saw it, you know, students would be saying exactly what you just said. Well, yeah, somebody just left our firm and they went to work for our client, and this is what they're doing. It's like, you know, so they don't make any decisions that ever would impact a financial statement in any way. Really? Really? How do they pull that one off? And I didn't say the same thing. So you can go tell them that Keith says they're right up against the line. If not over it, I'd have the debate with them. You know, how do you have them not make any decisions that affect the statements? You just don't do nothing. That's okay. Yeah. Give them a salary for being there. Yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff. Partner rotation, you guys? What's the deal on that one?
5 years, 7 years.
Yeah, 5 years. So after 5 years, they're off, right? The lead concurring partners. We talked about that. And then what else? How long is it before they can come back? How long is the timeout? 5 years. So it's 5 and 5. So it's a long time. This one's got some teeth, doesn't it? What about other partners? 7 years, and they got 2 years on it. Okay, so pretty good, huh? I think they did a good job with this one. I think it's pretty good. Okay, so can you imagine you work on an engagement for 5 years? Somebody else works on a different one for 5 years, and you trade places? I guess. Right?
In the book, it talks about how the PCAOB wants to make it to where, like, the auditors and, like, as a whole have to rotate off every 5 years, not just a partner. Like,
Yeah, because who actually does the audit? Partners or the managers and seniors? Managers and seniors and staff. They're actually doing the audit. But how hard did that be for firms? Wow.
How do you have any continuity and engagement of knowledge? It's really tough.
Ideally, I guess what you'd have is you'd have them staggered. So every year, part of the audit team disappears and you replace them. You know, the next year you replace them. So that you don't have everybody leave at the end of 5 years. There's nobody that knows what the hell's going on in a particular audit.
Exactly what it says beyond that 5 years.
Yeah, well, with staff, they rotate off anyway. But then as they get promoted, they might still be on it, though. So maybe it would work okay, especially with the big four. Why would I say that? They got so many employees, right? Although some of the smaller offices, for small firms, that would be really cumbersome. But it's only going to be for publicly held companies anyway, right? So, yeah, it's a good idea. That was the original intent, was all the auditors changed. What's the good thing about that? You maintain more independence, of course. You know, you get to know people too well. You're having meals with them all the time. You're golfing with them all the time. You're whatever. You know, you get to know each other really too well, and maybe your independence gets impacted. And also, there's this thing of, you know, when you work on an engagement after a while, and everything's always in good shape, might you get a little careless? You know what I mean? We rarely find adjusting journal entries. We rarely have any conflicts. Might you start assuming everything's okay without auditing it very well? Yeah, I think there's a tendency to go sort of creeping towards that. I think there's some of that too. So the original intent was, yeah, we'd be rotating all the time. What's the problem with that? Audits are unbelievably expensive, and I think because it takes you so long, because you don't know what you're doing on the audit, right? You have to refamiliarize it. The new group has to get familiar with it. And then also, I think the quality of the audits would be lower because there's not familiarity with what's going on. You don't understand the business. You don't understand the transactions. So it's a double-edged sword. Does that make sense? So I think we need to be somewhat careful with this. But used to be people would spend their entire career working on the same audit. What do you think of that? Wow. And have you guys been on some of these audits, like Humana or Atria or GE or any one of the big ones? How long are those staff on those audits during the year? What portion of the year are they on? Yeah, 75% on one engagement. And then it's year after year after year. Who do you work for? You working for the CPA firm? Or are you working for the client? Where do you spend all your time? Who do you know better? Right? One of the things that is really cool about working in public accounting is you don't get tired of the people that are in the firm because you never see them. Unless you're on the engagement together. Did you guys meet everybody in the office you were at that went out there? No, you met the people you worked on engagements with, didn't you? Who did you get to know better, the client people or the people at your firm? Wow, that's an interesting question, isn't it? So you can imagine if you stay on the same one over and over and over. So yeah, it's a legitimate issue. And I think it is for smaller firms too. Okay, ownership interest, we talked about that, right? Interesting here, huh? That can you influence the audit? So who are they? Who are these folks? Rules prohibit any ownership by what? Covered persons and their immediate family. Who would be a covered person? Members of the audit engagement team. So if you have an ownership share in a client, can you work on that client even if you're a staff person? No. All right? So members of the engagement team, anybody working on the audit. Those in a position to influence the audit engagement in the firm's chain of command. So anybody that's an advising partner, right? They couldn't be an advising partner if they've got an ownership interest. So the best thing is just not to have ownership. Partners and managers who provide more than 10 hours of non-audit service, and so it gets detailed, right? And partners in the office of the partner primarily responsible for the audit engagement. This one's big. They can be in separate offices. So you have a whole bunch of different offices all over the place. If you are in the Memphis audit, and the audit, if you are in the Memphis office for a firm, and the audit is being done in Louisville, as long as you're not working on the audit, you can have an ownership share in their clients, right? But if you're working on the audit at all now, no, right? But if you're both in the Louisville office, if that Memphis partner moves to Louisville, all of a sudden they have to get rid of all their stock ownership in any client here. You get the idea? You can't be in the same office. You could be in a different office. What difference would that make? I don't know. With communication going back and forth, I don't know why this is this way. So what do firms do? No matter which office you're in, they have to get rid of all your holdings so that you can work across on the audits. Yeah. Okay.
So like if the audit part, so like for when I was from Foreman, the main audit partner was from North Carolina, because it's like the rotation. So would it be the North Carolina office partners that would technically be in that situation, or the Louisville office? Because the Louisville office wasn't.
Were they running the audit out of Louisville, or are they running the audit out of?
It was staff, like all the staff.
That's an interesting one. But the managing partner was in North Carolina. It's really a mute issue because, of course, none of them had any ownership interest because of firm policy. But according to the rules, wow, it's where the audit is headquartered. Suppose if they're signing the audit opinion in North Carolina, I doubt if they were. I bet they signed it in Louisville. I bet they assigned that managing partner to the engagement for the Louisville office because they're running the audit out of Louisville. And I bet the client wanted it to say Louisville, Kentucky on their financial statements because that's where they're located.
So it'd still be the Louisville.
So it's probably the Louisville office. Yeah, but that's interesting. You know, with the partner, with the managing partner in another office or a consulting partner in another office, which could happen a lot, you have to make sure that their partners at that location weren't having any influence on that audit. So you can see why firms just have blanket rules, right? Just get rid of the holdings. But I think the rules are going to still live that way. I think they'd have been better off to go all the way. Any partner anywhere in the world, no. And they'd have been done with it. Okay? They'd have been far less complex to try to monitor. By the way, this was horrendous. trying to remember which firm it was now. Yeah, I'm not going to say. It was one of the big fours. I'm not going to say because I can't remember for sure which one it was. Just incredible scandals with violation of ownership of stock. Unbelievable. Remember which one that was? It was KPMG. Well, KPMG for sure had the tax one.
Oh, maybe.
Where they were selling tax schemes, basically, to their clients that were at least unethical, probably illegal, probably tax fraud. And a whole bunch of partners at KPMG were selling these tax schemes, avoid taxes, by investing in limited partnerships. They're selling them. Yeah, so that was a huge one. But I thought this might be a different firm. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So one of the big four firms. They did an audit of it. Public Company Accounting Oversight Board did an audit of it, and they had partners all over the world who owned a whole bunch of stock in their clients. Even within the same office, they owned a whole bunch of stock in their clients. Just ignored it. So this stuff is meaningful, you guys, and they got censured for that, fined for that. Big mess. Damaged their reputation. KPMG really damaged their reputation on the other one, too. Videos about it that everybody's watching all over the place. You're on public TV, on Frontline doing stories on you. It's lovely, right? About committing tax fraud in that case. Okay, so yeah. So anyway, the 10 hours, and if you just don't have the partners and managers, own it, then you don't have to keep track of that. Okay, so anyway, partners in the office primarily responsible for engagement. So it's intended to safeguard. Okay, and all right, let's see. From a private company audit over on page 91, who's a covered member? Rule 101, individuals on the attest engagement team, actually on the team, an individual in a position to influence the attest engagement, okay? 1 through 6 there, right? A partner or manager who provides non-attest services to the client. Oh, so you're a covered member then? So I'm doing the taxes. I'm not an audit partner, or I'm an audit manager, but I'm doing their tax return. Now I'm a covered member. I have ownership share either. Okay, and this is on the private, smaller firms and private clients. A partner in the office of the partner responsible for the engagement, so that's the same as with the SEC. The firm and its employee benefit plans. Okay, so you'd have to be independent of those too, covered member. Okay, an entity that can be controlled by any of the covered members listed above. Okay, so any ownership. So what's a direct financial interest? We mentioned that, where you own the stock yourself. What's indirect? Mutual fund typically. Okay, you're doing it through some investment vehicles. Okay, what about material or immaterial? Where does material matter? Does it matter for a direct investment? Giving you answers on the CPA exam. What do you think? What's the scope for materiality on direct ownership? Can't have any. One share. You're not independent, right? At least in appearance. Okay. So materiality doesn't matter. No scope for materiality. What about if it's indirect? Through a mutual fund. We're auditing the mutual fund, and 100% of my assets are in the mutual fund. It's all I own. My whole retirement. I could not audit TIA prep, you guys, because about, 60-70% of what I'm worth is in TIA prep. Could I be an auditor for them? No. Am I material to them? No. Are they material to me? Yes. Got it? Okay. So either direction. So materiality matters. So anyway, we did former practitioners, I think, right? So normal lending we did. Okay, how about financial interest in employment? We didn't talk about employment, did we? Immediate and close family members. What if your child is a employee of your client? Is that okay? So you can't have any of your kids working for any of your clients in any capacity? So if you had a client, your child graduates from college and takes a job someplace, you have to sell your stock? No, you can't sell your stock. You don't have any stock. You have to resign the engagement. Somebody else is their auditor. Or you have to tell your kids not to go to work there. Really? That's what happens? I don't think so. What's the deal with it?
They hold any position that can have influence over any of the statements.
That's it. Yeah. So if they're working on the loading dock, who cares? If they get an internship there as a kid, who cares? If they go to work in marketing, probably who cares, right? What if they go to work in an accounting function where they are responsible for making decisions related to finances? Now you got a problem, okay? So you've got to discourage them from doing that, or you have to get rid of the client, okay? Got the idea? So you don't really want your kids to go to work for your clients. It's one of the easiest places that you could probably help your kids get a job. Sucks, doesn't it? It's your clients. Yeah, really. So what you do is you get your client to help them get a job at one of their competitors. Not a problem in the least. Do it all the time. That's why I don't think we need this revolving door thing that we're talking about, you know, where you go to work for the client yourself. If nobody could go to work for their clients for, say, 5 years after they're done, do a 5-year rule on it. So, you know, you work and you're a senior, and you want to go to work. All you do is you tell your client that you'd really like to work for them, but you can't, would they recommend you for their competitor, and they, of course, and then their competitor, they'd hire people. You just hire people from other CPA firms. You wouldn't hire from your CPA firm. Now, there's a disadvantage to that. What is it? If you're a senior on an engagement for, you pick the company, right? You're on IBM's engagement and you reach senior level, you might be a good mid-level manager for them, huh? Because you're really familiar with their business, but you'd have to go to work for one of their competitors instead, or something, right? For somebody else. But it still work with. I think we got carried away with allowing that to happen. By the way, who wanted that? We did, right? CPAs did. We wanted the ability to move, and then the thing was that was going to be considered a restraint of trade. I'm prohibiting you from taking a job, right? Now, that's scary, right? Because now you have a different federal agency involved in it, right? Antitrust. You know, you can't stop people from getting a job just because they work someplace. That's not appropriate. So they look at that stuff. Okay. So how do the rules work then for the close family members? Children, parents that live with you, anybody you're responsible for, any dependents, certainly. What do you think?
It's materials and they can't have them.
Materiality works here, or is it one share? If you're controlling their investing, it's one share, isn't it? If it's theirs, material to wealth, is that how it works? What do you think? It's got to be significant ownership interest in the client, right? Okay. So yeah. So anyway, the idea is significant influence over the client. Okay. Otherwise, it does not impair independence. And we talked about the joint investments, and we talked about working for them. So yeah. Oh, by the way, if your client does not pay you, can you keep their records? Who do the records belong to? Who do their records belong to? Them. Might you ever have a situation where you have their records in your possession? Not so much now, because usually you have access to them electronically, but it used to be when they were hard copy papers, pieces of paper, they'd actually give you pieces of paper. I always thought it was stupid to take those pieces of paper out of their office. You got to stay in their office and work on them. But the CPAs win. They take the stuff, to their offices, and they're working on them. Can you keep any of their documents, their general ledger? Can you keep their stuff because they didn't pay you your bill? No, that's theft. You can't keep it for any reason, so that's a violation of your ethics, right? You can't keep any of their stuff, right? It's theirs. Okay, so that was pretty easy, and including for non-payment. Okay, so then it sort of goes along with the litigation thing. So you can't do that. What about your work papers? Do you have to give them your work papers? The answer is no, they're not theirs, they're yours. The financial statement is theirs, the audit opinion is yours, right? All their records are theirs. Your work papers are yours. You don't share your work papers with them. You don't want them to know what you did, even. You have no obligation to do that at all. How about if a court subpoenas us? Subpoenas our records, right? Our work papers. They can subpoena their records too, of course. Right? How about if a court subpoenas us, right? Our records, then they force us to testify? Yes, we have no client CPA privilege. Can they do that with doctors, lawyers, clergy? No. They have legal privilege. Why? They're advocates. We're independent. We should not have any special privilege. So be careful about what we write down. You might have noticed that already. Hey, you guys know what points are yet? The senior looks at your work, or whoever's above you, and they review everything you did, and they write a big long list of things that you need to clear, all points, right? And everything that they think you might not have considered, anything you did wrong, we write page after page after page of these things, right? All the things you did wrong, and then you go clear them, don't you? What do we do with those when the engagement's done? We destroy them. When I first started my career, we used to keep them, and we'd keep them in the file, and next year you'd read them all. So you'd know what all the issues were, right? What all the things were that you resolved, how you resolved them, right? What all the training that happened was good documentation. You did a lot of training, you wrote a lot of points, right? Showed people how to do things. Why do we get rid of them? Because if there's a lawsuit relating to that engagement, when they request our work papers, they now get all the points too. Didn't used to. Used to be, no, we'll just destroy those things. Now, no, you don't destroy anything after the fact, right? So as soon as the engagement's done, we destroy all those. So we get rid of all the record of all the things that we did. We're not getting rid of any evidence supporting the opinion. We keep everything that is necessary to support the opinion, and we get rid of everything else, right? Because we don't have any privilege to keep those things if we go support, right? Seems kind of backwards, doesn't it? They want full disclosure, but then, you know be a little careful. Because imagine, we listen, did you look for this? Did you look for this? Did you look for this? And that turns out to be what the fraud was. And you say, well, no, I didn't. I thought this was probably not material. And then the senior says, yeah, it's probably not material. And the manager signs, yeah, it's not material. The partner signs, it's not material. And that's the transaction where you would have found the fraud. You're dead. You're going to lose. So get rid of it. Okay? And it's appropriate because that information is not evidence in support of the disclosure of the financial statement, right? Not necessary for that. So you're real careful about those types of things. So this is sort of a serious area, guys. Or maybe really. Okay, anyway. They list all of them. Green boxes are important, right? Integrity and objectivity, general standards. What is that? You're going to comply with what? Professional competence, due professional care, planning and supervision, sufficient relevant data. Okay? These are just the auditing standards, huh? Okay? And then compliance with the standards will follow the standards. The accounting principles will use GAAP, right? And you're going to express an opinion. Okay? These look just like the earlier standards we did. On confidential client information, I told you about the folks that were sitting around in Boise, right? You know, discussing what the president of the company was making, destroy their career with the firm. You know, this is really serious. You are going to know things that nobody else knows. I like full disclosure in organizations. I think it's kind of silly if the president of the company doesn't want anybody to know how much they make because it's so much. I think they should be able to justify their salary. It's a publicly held company, everybody knows anyway, because it's disclosed, right? You have to disclose it. You can, even for us, we're a nonprofit, so it's disclosed. You can look up what the 10 highest paid people at this university make, right? What their total packages. Right? We disclose it. It's in the 990. And so corporations do similar disclosures. But if it's a privately held company, do they disclose it? No. And they don't have to. And you're going to know. So do you have to keep that private? Yes. You're going to know whether somebody is thinking about selling a portion of their business or investing in another business. Would you ever divulge that to anybody? No. Including people you have romantic relationships with? Yes. Yes. You don't talk about this stuff, guys. Don't do it. And it's come back to bite a lot of people, right? Because that other person that you disclosed it to, if they disclose it to anybody else, you have, right? They can do you in. So don't give people that kind of ammunition, I guess. But also just totally inappropriate. So we're boring people. You go to a cocktail party, you know all kinds of interesting things, and what do you talk about? sports. Right? Not what you're working. Okay? So I told you I have a brother, or rather a cousin, who worked for the CIA, still does. He's a high-level guy at the CIA, pretty high. I think he's a fairly high-level guy. I'm not really sure because I don't know what he does. I'm not kidding. I don't know where he's been. I don't know what he's done, and I never will, because he never tells anybody. Neither does his wife. Really. She does know they live in a really nice house and have really nice cars. It's a really nice paycheck, even though he works for the federal government. Right? Doing really well. But nobody knows what he does. Violation of the code of ethics, right? Okay. And who knows what he's working on, too. It's kind of scary, but it's interesting, very. So, confidential client information. Be very, very careful. If a court subpoenas the records, will you give them to him? Yes. Your work papers, yes. Yeah, sure. Obviously, you got all that stuff. So read through these exceptions. They privileged information. Talk about, peer review. Will we let an organization, Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, is doing a review of the audit? Can we give them the information? Yes, it's not a violation. Okay. Even a peer review for a smaller CPA firm, we have private clients, same rules. Okay, you can give it to them. Okay, so contingent fees they talked about, we talk about. What is an act that's discreditable? Did you guys pick up on that? What could be discreditable?
Murder.
Yeah, any felony conviction, right? Any felony conviction. So if you don't have a felony conviction, right? Crime punishable by imprisonment for more than 1 year, willful failure to file income tax return. That's interesting, isn't it? The CPA or an individual taxpayer is required to follow by law. The filing of a false or fraudulent income tax return. Willful aiding in the preparation and presentation of false and fraudulent tax returns. So a lot of it's tax returns, okay? And then crimes. Misdemeanors? No. Felonies? Yes. Okay, basically that's the idea. Okay. Does this apply to everybody, whether you're in public or private practice? Yes. Okay. So if you're working for a company, it still applies. Okay, so it's not what you might think discreditable. I mentioned advertising too as we went through. Yeah, on advertising, as long as it's not what? Misleading. So can you claim to be an expert at something? No, because you can't establish that you're an expert. So be careful with this stuff. I have seen some ads by CPA firms that are on the edge. I've seen some where they're tax experts. They're consulting experts in different companies. Be careful with that. Tell them what you do. Right? They say price bidding for audits is quite common. There will be requests for proposals put out. Maybe they'll give them to several CPA firms, and the CPA firm puts in a bid. Is that okay? Yeah. It's a real problem for our profession, though, that the firms compete quite as much as they do. Because I think what we do is we diminish people's impression of how important auditing is. And what we do is we have done from time to time as a profession is we treat auditing as a loss leader for other work we can get. I can get consulting work. People love to pay for consulting because it's going to make them money. They hate to pay for audits and tax returns because you don't make any money off of that, they think, right? Because they can't trade their stock, but little things like that don't seem to matter, okay? And they can't, stay in compliance with the IRS, but they don't care about that either. Those things they see as costs that don't benefit them. They like consulting. So what do CPA firms do? Do the audit really, really cheap so they have a relationship with them so they can get the consulting. But then once you're doing it cheap, the partner working on the consulting, what are they responsible for doing? Make sure you make money on the audit. But if you didn't bid enough money to make money, what are you going to do? Cut the auditing you do. Do less. And we do that. And we say, well, we're more efficient than we used to be. So we can look at fewer things. We're more efficient and more effective with our audit procedures. So we can look at fewer things. And then what happens? We blow a bunch of audits. There's a whole bunch of scandals, a whole bunch of frauds that we don't catch. And now the profession's in trouble again. And we tend to do this every 10 years. Cycle through. So I was talking to Dave County about it. And he says, Keith, you wouldn't believe how much competitive pressure there is now. Everybody's giving audits away again. And I said, what? Are you kidding me? didn't we just get done with Sarbanes-Oxley? He says, yeah, I know. He says, it's crazy. We're losing money on all our audits again. Why would you do that? The airline industry is pretty good at this too, right? They've gotten better. Now they're making money because they don't give you anything for free anymore, do they? Right? But it used to be they were so competitive with each other on fares, and the gasoline prices, the fuel prices, the airline fuel prices were so high, they couldn't possibly make any money. Full planes didn't make any money. They'd lose money on every flight. And the whole industry is about to go bankrupt because they're giving it away. Well, I wanted to fly cheap too, don't get me wrong. And I hate having high fares now, but I'd really rather have a viable airline industry, wouldn't you? When we were doing the same sort of thing, we're killing ourselves. But then the firms could do consulting, and they could do auditing, and they could do taxes, they could do everything for their clients. Well, what happened? Now we can't, right? But they're still bidding the audits down. Why would they be bidding the audits down? They're not going to do any other work for that particular client. Oh, but they might get that work later when they rotate, right? When the client rotates auditors. Getting the idea? By the way, if every 5 years the partner has to go out for the engagement, what would be a good idea for the client to do? Seeing as they're going to lose the partner anyway. What would be a really good idea for them to do at that point? Switch firms. Yeah, switch firms. So it makes which makes a lot of sense, actually. Why not? If you're going to restart anyway, why not go to a new firm, don't you think? At that point. It's kind of funny with 4 firms, though. 4 big 4 firms, what tends to happen? One is your auditor. Another one does your taxes. Another one does your consulting. And what's the 4th one going to be? Your next auditor. And then you rotate through it. So there's a breather, right? What do you think of that model? What if we go down to 3 firms? What if another one collapses? Or if there's another merger? What's independence going to look like? Can we even follow these new rules? Interesting, huh? So, kind of fun stuff. So, they talk about the form of organization. Oh, this is important. See, on the first one under form of organization, CPAs must own a majority of the firm's financial interests and voting rights. You're not a CPA firm unless you have CPAs, right? CPA must have ultimate responsibility for all attest services, compilation, anything where you have to be independent. Owners must at all times own their equity in their own right. They can't give it to somebody else. You can't sell it like shares of stock. Okay? And so anyway, we still have some rules relating to this. Okay? How about the name, though? You can't say you're members of the ICP unless you are, right? Unless all CPA owners are, right? And members in the firm is a member too. A member shall not practice public accounting under a firm name that is misleading. Names of one or more past owners may be included in the firm name, and it can be virtually any name as long as it's not misleading. It doesn't imply some sort of expertise or something along those lines. Okay, nice summary over on page 102, but not comprehensive enough. So I guess we got legal next time, huh? Pound up. Pound up.